So if there's an immediate opening and a licensed person is in the pool, that hiring can be done within a week or two. It can be very quick. That person could be, there's so many variables.
So how long does it take to get into the pool? Because I've heard, and again, you hear different things, that it's very slow to hear back. And so
From me?
From you, Kent. And so a lot of times they'll just go and seek employment elsewhere because it just took too long, the process took too long to hear back.
I've never heard that. If that's the case, I'd love specifics so I could look into it and see.
Look into it and share.
It could also be various reasons. A lot of times people will think that they're qualified for a position, and if they're not, they won't be the one that gets the first, the second, or the third call. And so they might be hired before that person's reached. But if you have specific concerns, I'd be happy to address them.
To Dr. Nichols' point, I'm assuming there's some sort of incentive program.
Yes.
A bonus for us, for a teacher who is here, who recommends another teacher and that teacher is hired.
Yes.
Yes, and so philosophically, we have gone against the we'll sign you to come here. We have gone with we'll give you a bonus if you recruit somebody here.
Yeah.
So a lot of school divisions gone, $5,000 to come here, or $6,000. To me, I find that as somebody who was in the same school division for 20 plus years, kind of offensive. Like, hey, I came here because I love this place. I want you. So what we do is exactly what you say. So that person who recruits gets that bonus, and then what they do with that after us, if they got some under the table,
Sure.
it's fine.
Sure.
But that's so.
Okay.
But this board may have a different philosophical approach to it.
I think everyone, I certainly feel the same way. I'm not, purchases like that don't last.
Yeah.
Correct.
The only time we will do any type of signing bonus would be if we are at a career fair and perhaps a upper level math teacher is coming in, and I'll say, if you choose to come to Beacon within the next 10 business days, we'll have a small, give some kind of bonus, just to get them off of the fence and to commit quickly, but that's very rare.
But that's different, that's not hiring from one position.
Pardon?
He's at the career fair already.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Cooney, back to your question, and as we get more specifics, we dive into it further. What I see on my end, and I have Apple track our system up, is a lot of not submitted applications that are partially filled. We can't do anything with those until they submit it. I can still see Ross Miller's are there, but if they don't fill out every single thing, it won't show up as submitted. I know I've had some conversations with some folks.
So it could be just something that's.
Now, we may be able to automate something that says, hey, you started an application, this has not been submitted, do you still want to submit, kind of trigger that? So there may be definitely some things we can do on our end. We do not want that to be a barrier, for sure.
Yeah.
Not in this climate, so if there's information that you have that can help, I'd be happy to have, sure. So aside on these things, you can see some of the things these partnerships bring us, student teachers. We've talked about residency and things before. So we try to, you can go to the next one, we try to offer things to our student teachers. We have our student teachers coming in. That's something I'm trying to get a little stronger at. I want to try to get these student teachers in and make sure that they feel at home right away. I think that's something that we could do better, and so my team's working on that. We obviously have career switcher programs, which we've talked about. We just switched from ODU to VCU. I'm happy about that because it's closer to here, and they have a nice program that they're starting with us. But these,
Let me interrupt again if I may, before we get too far down the road on another topic. What is it that interests a student teacher outside of the salary is obviously somewhat important, but what is it? What else could we do?
I can talk to some of that.
To encourage them to stay, or encourage them to, or invite them into the family more? Or do you feel like we're doing absolutely everything we can do?
No, I don't.
Because that's a okay answer too.
I think that affordable housing could be an issue.
Oh, it is a major roadblock for teachers, firefighters, police officers in New Kent. So I'm brainstorming, Ross, other things that you think.
I mean, Allison, she can speak to a lot of this, just, I've heard her talk about it before, but one of the big things that are coming out right now is they're looking for feedback, looking for professional development. How are you gonna support my growth as I'm moving forward, and looking for those structures you have in place to help them to grow as a professional, is a big piece of what they're.
Question to clarify. So does that mean that a student teacher is going to graduate and start teaching with a bachelor's degree, working toward a master's, or will they stay in and are they completing a master's degree?
Both.
It could be any of those,
Yes.
depending on the university and the program.
So like if you take like a CNU or William and Mary, let's take CNU. CNU only does a master's.
Okay,
So that if you want to leave CNU with a teaching license, you have to go through their master's art teaching program. William and Mary will do both. William and Mary will send you off with a license and a master's program, or they'll send you off with a license and a bachelor's program. So they do both.
okay.
Yeah, and I think Longwood does both as well. So if you are student teaching with us, you are eligible to hire after that student teaching, whether you decide to go out or not.
Bachelor's program before.
No, I mean the masters, because my daughter, William Mary specifically, had a 5-year program where you got your BA first, then you got your master's and credential.
Correct.
And
Right.
student teaching.
That's
Are all the programs like that now?
Not all like that.
At one point in time, you used to be able to get your bachelor's in education. They did away with that and went to master's.
Yes.
And now they've realized that, like anything, an all or nothing approach is not best. So universities now some have both.
And I've met a lot of teachers that come out a little disillusioned because they thought they had to get a master's. They're like, oh, I got my master's, so now where's my license? Some of them don't even have a license attached to them. So you have to be really careful when you're guiding
Well, and
future teachers.
to Ross's point, as far as how we're going to support them in their endeavor to do better, do we have something in place for those, or maybe we don't have enough bachelor's headed student teachers to get into, but do we have something in place that would support them in that, or be an incentive for them to come here knowing that there's gonna be some sort of pathway or
get
help
that
assessments, whatever?
Yes, yes, so the nice thing is we have several different programs. We have a program, if I'm understanding your question, right? We have a program that helps our employees that don't have associate's degrees even yet. They go to community college with the associate's degree. JMU picks them up, takes them through the program to get their degree and their license. So we do have those, and we financially support people through those, which are great. Also to just clarify.
We do the same with bachelor's to master's as well. We kind of taken, and this is, I think makes us a little unique, we've kind of taken that over in partnership with teachers. When I went back to get my master's, nobody helped me. Fortunately, I went to a good program. What we're finding out is people are going to programs that are unaccredited, or they're going to programs where they are paying far more tuition. We have a lot of deals and agreements with universities to cut that tuition.
Okay,
And then we can then do tuition reimbursement. So what we're trying to do is, if you want to advance your learning, whether it's to get your associates or to get your master's or whatever the case would be, it comes through HR and we match you up with programs. And what that allows us to do is it allows a more efficient pathway for the employee. Because when we first started this, we were taking employees that were partially through some programs. It's like, this is a dead end. Like, you're gonna spend thousands of
Right,
dollars.
right.
And not
That's
leave
good.
with the license.
yeah,
And not be with a license.
Sure.
So it's.
and yeah, that's good. I should, I just,
Yeah.
more for my education.
Oh, absolutely. And it's
you know.
for our employees too, so we push this all the time, but making sure that they know if you, and I had a conversation this week, no, not this week, it's only Monday, last week, with an employee just saying, hey, you're working on this degree, we do tuition reimbursement, have you done tuition reimbursement? I didn't do tuition reimbursement. Okay, that's what it's there for. It's to
Sure,
offset
that's
that.
good.
And then for our higher critical needs areas, like you saw special education earlier, we have programs that are specific for that. So if you are a teacher and you already have a license and you want to add on the special education, we'll foot the bill. So we try really hard financially. Our goal is kind of silly, it's how I knew we were growing together. We both try to say yes to things people told us no to as teachers.
Yeah.
Because we remember what that's like. So we pay, I used to remember every year, 3 years and then 5, writing the check to get my license renewed. I'm like, oh my God, I'm paying $100 to get my license renewed. And I didn't have it. And then so we're paying those for our teachers now. So we just try to find
And
little
it
things like
makes
that.
us part of the process. We make sure our teachers stay licensed.
Sure.
We know when the date is.
That's good.
We write the check, and it's a relatively small investment. One more thing, we talked about advancement. Dual enrollment is a huge struggle to have teachers that have that qualification.
Yeah.
So we've been growing our own dual enrollment teachers under the same umbrella. If you want to do dual enrollment with us, so we have at least 2 that are now able to teach dual enrollment because they work with us and RCC to be able to do that.
And one of the things I talked about with Dr. Nichols about is my daughter's experience where she had to do 2 sets of syllabi. And you guys are streamlined.
Correct.
So they only have to do college syllabi or syllabus and as opposed to both the high school and college.
We try to operate under, and it's a lot of conversation, Ross and his team and Rappahannock Community College to be on one accord. But we do that to minimize the burden.
Yeah, and she won't do it because of that issue. So I really appreciate that. The other thing I want to say is, how are your people going to be integrated with your student teacher program?
Our coaches, just like our teachers who are on staff, and if they're asked to go in and support, they do. If they know that,
Your master teachers, do they have a relationship with your coaches?
do
You have a master teacher and a
Yes.
student teacher.
right, correct, yes.
So they work together.
Yes. And our coaches will work also with me,
And that's one of the things you asked earlier, Mr. Wright, what interests the student teachers. One of the things that the generation that's coming out now truly wants that we didn't is constant feedback and constant support. So they need to have somebody that they can go to.
Until it's not good.
And well,
Then they whine for you.
yeah.
Whine,
But
scream, and cry.
I remember hiring a teacher last year, and I actually stole him from my daughter's school. And I said, what was the final decision? He said, I never met my principal. And so and he was a student teacher, so to be fair, he didn't have to.
Right.
It didn't have to be done, but what we're trying and what my team's trying to do better next school year is really make those student teachers like just feel at home the second day.
If you're a student teacher, you're not only have met your principal, you've met Mr. Miller, you've met Ms. Anderson, you've met myself, you've met the team.
Yeah.
So you get that. Yeah, as a former teacher, I didn't want to see anybody.
Right,
I
leave me
wanted to do
alone.
my thing and be in my room.
Sure.
It's shifting, it's different, and just to recognize and appreciate that.
It's very different.
So I was at the middle school today and they were talking about the mentors
Yes,
that they provide. Is that different than an instructional coach?
Yes,
it is.
Okay, and then do all the schools offer the mentorship program?
Every new teacher that comes to New Kent, whether every new hire as a teacher gets a
And
mentor.
even if you're not new, you're still new to New Kent, so we
Right.
provide that.
Yeah, so everybody has a mentor.
And do you know if other schools, sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
Oops.
1 year.
1 year.
so do you know if other schools offer that? Or is
Yeah,
that
we-
something specific to New Kent?
Warhill does that.
So we,
So not many, well, maybe.
Well,
I know that Warhill does, I don't know. about-
people have mentorship programs, it's a fairly standard practice. The quality and effectiveness of it, sometimes it's in name only.
Right.
So as a matter of fact, Ross and Allison worked hard to completely revamp ours this year because it was a little bit in name only.
Yeah.
It was done centrally, which some things should be done centrally. We have an overarching vision for new teacher, but now each school has a new teacher leader who leads the program. Because new teachers at middle school need something very different
Very.
than the preschool new teacher at Quincy.
Big classroom discipline.
So we have somebody, a master teacher at each school that leads the new teacher program. And then you have you were in
Ms.
the,
Searham does that.
she's the leader of that program for the middle school. And she makes sure that the mentors and mentees are doing the things they need to
Do
do.
those mentor teachers receive an extra stipend
Yes, ma'am.
or, yeah?
Oh, great.
And we try to love on them a little bit and give them something here and there. And that is different from the coaches, which is great.
So as we close out this first year with this revised program, we'll be having those conversations with all three levels, the person in charge of the building, the teacher mentor, the mentors and the mentees, what went well, what, you know, those pieces. I think your question, a lot of mentor programs, it is a year, but we know teachers need more than a year. So I think that's one of the conversation pieces is, what does year 2 look like, especially if you're brand new to teaching? If you're year 2 and you're coming from another place, maybe not as much. But I think to drop it at year 1 may be a disservice when we know many teachers leave in years 3 through 5.
I would agree with that.
Once the honeymoon period's over and kind of certain things just set in, I think that it would be important to have the extra support
I
the
agree.
second and third year at least.
Yeah, Ross and I were actually discussing a few weeks ago, keeping all provisionally licensed teachers with a mentor the entire provision period instead of the first year.
That makes sense.
So
Which is
just
a
trying
3-year
to,
period. So.
which is a financial investment, but I think it's important. And it's also where the coaching piece comes in is nice too, because you might, there was a year where I had been teaching 10 years, but then all of a sudden I had a new subject. I didn't need a mentor anymore, I needed someone to help me with a new subject, so that helps.
Well, that's slightly different than what I saw today, which was more about techniques of class management and presentation, in a small group and things like that.
Very specific to that teacher, very.
So, but the other thing that and I've been talking to Ross about this in some context, is I think that we could really help with retention too. And making the burden of lesson planning less over time by creating model lesson plans that are maintained and are reusable, and having a library of those so that, there's really it requires some discipline, there's really no reason why we can't do that, right? Especially with the work that the coaches are doing, they're essentially creating.
Well, and we can leverage those master's teachers once again and invest in some curriculum writing throughout the summer, throughout those different pieces, pay these folks to do what they're doing.
So
use it
they
as
don't
an
have to
example.
restart reading.
So you're talking like a template so they could actually go and pull from that template?
SOP.
Yes.
Okay.
So with big chunks of it filled out and then, but tailoring to, I have Greg in my class and he's not quite, or he's way this,
Yeah.
those pieces that provides that flexibility in the teacher moves that teachers always have to make,
But there are standard practices that you guys are teaching that every teacher should follow. Now, they may not follow the same way, but,
Well, I think it's worth considering, especially because we're rolling out the Virginia Literacy Act in year 1, new math standards rolling, like everything is rolling at one time, which is not great, but
no, it's not.
we'll manage it. It's an opportunity to put that SOP together.
When I
Do you
was
think
teaching,
sorry.
sorry, go ahead. When I was teaching in New York, and this was a while back, but we would have teachers that would actually go in the summer and do summer curriculum and work on curriculum. And we'd get paid a stipend or something, and we'd work on that. And that was always really well received by the other teachers. Is there something like that here?
We have done that, yes.
Okay.
Do we have any lined up for this summer, Ross?
Not yet.
That's it. Summer's still coming together.
Yeah.
So my question was, if you could speak just a little bit as to what's already implemented. I know we briefly spoke about kind of how the curriculum is created to some extent, but as far as like a model lesson plan, what is already in place? What would need to be added to that in order to make something like that happen? And then the second question is that something that teachers are looking for, or would they more overall just kind of like to do their own thing? I mean, I would like to just be given something so I don't have to sit and recreate the wheel, but I wondered what teachers are feeling,
So
if we have any feedback on that.
One reason I love it here is because we're small enough that we can know our teachers. He's visible enough that he knows so many of them and exactly what they want and need, and everyone is different. So I like that we can
I think the
match
answer to that
what they
question is
need.
yes, which is not a good answer, but I think it does vary. But if you provide a floor from everybody to work from,
That's right.
then, you know, the ceiling is all over the place. But I think to make sure we have that common floor, which is what Ross and his team really try to do.
It would seem to me that the more continuity there is in the curriculum and setting up your SOP, one, it becomes quantifiable and measurable at that point with consistency. And outside of that, how could you even evaluate quantitatively progress? Help me understand that.
I'm gonna get myself too far out of my lane, it's a former lane, but Ross, go ahead.
So I would echo, just jumping back a little bit to what Ryan says and what Allison was saying is with every teacher is going to sort of basically have a different answer to that question regarding do I want the handbook given to me or do I want to develop a handbook for my class? Some of them want pretty much a lockstep procedure of, hey, tell me how to do it and I'll follow the process. Some want more autonomy on, now I want to get creative with my lessons, I want my kids doing these types of things. As far as measurability, I mean, we do have assessments throughout the year that are common. And that's how we see, okay, are we still making the same progress? Even if teacher A is teaching differently than teacher B, are we making the same progress? Also with the students that are in the room, having basically it's a different mix of students in each room, different personalities, different likes, dislikes. So as you do like your examples and things like that in projects, you adjust for who you have in the room. One of the activities that a lot of teachers do at the beginning, like the first day of school, is finding getting to know their students and getting to know where their interests are. So then as they're going through the year, they plan their lessons and incorporate some of those pieces into it. And so giving them that level of autonomy, but then the structures are very similar. You're going to spend this many minutes doing this type of activity. You're going to spend this many minutes doing this type of activity. So our literacy block, for example, is very laid out of you're going to have this much time in small group. You're going to have this much time in whole group. You're going to have this much time on phonics. And basically those pieces are very well structured. But then within that time period, you have students with different needs, and so you need to adjust for that, and so we allow for that.
I just don't know how an adolescent, a middle school student, they don't even know who they are from day to day. So how do you work outside of a very structured program with that?
Let me give you a small example of what I saw today. And I didn't see how the teacher was going to work with that student, but I saw a problem and I saw something about the individual that's going to require the teacher to work with him differently. They were going through math and it was multiplication. And they were deconstructing the problem and learning how to do that to better understand the difference between tens and ones and how to do more complex multiplication. One student kept confusing the operations. So you're going to have to deal with him. You're going to have to find something different about him to connect with him in a different way so that he gets it through his head how the operations differ.
How about the other 20?
The other 20 were just fine with the way things were working.
And see, that's a whole different, that's not what we're talking about. The 20 students under a curriculum that has continuity versus.
Yeah.
That, so I'm just, and I'm not saying what we're doing is wrong or right or whatever, I'm just trying to find out and figure out in my head.
But I don't know that you guys are saying different things. Right, I mean, you're saying the continuity of the curriculum, which I agree with you, right? There's a timeline of, this is how we get through multiplication, division, and subtraction, right? And that's a timeline that all the students have to follow, and we expect you to know, your 1 through 10 multiplication tables in the 3 weeks, like every student is held to that standard. And maybe most of them are gonna, swallow what the teacher's feeding them, but there's gonna be those 1 or 2 kids that are not. They're still expected to rise to the level and know that knowledge, but we may have to feed it to them a different way, right? Whether it's visual, auditory, or hands-on, or whatever. I think that's what
kind of what
Greg is saying.
But I don't
We're not
disagree.
talking about changing the, that standard operating procedure for that child. It's just the application of it in certain circumstances.
I'm just getting hung up on the autonomy. I don't know where, a long scale autonomy fits into the process.
Yeah.
Because it may not be appealing or pleasing or appeasing or exciting to all the students, but nothing is typically, unless things have changed since I was raising kids.
You're not gonna be able to do that every single time, but that's why you have pull-out, you have small group instruction to deal with those struggling students.
But back to our original topic of discussion was, does lesson plans that are developed in a template fashion help
Support.
Well,
teachers?
I'm arguing for those templates, even with that caveat.
Yeah, that's where I am also.
Yeah, I believe that they do.
Okay.
Because it's a starting point for the
But
instructor.
I'm hearing that we're not necessarily doing that.
Right.
Well,
Am I?
We do not do that in every subject, every grade level.
Okay,
at this
and
point.
that's what I thought I was hearing.
So perhaps board members, an opportunity for future work sessions to do more of a curriculum, from written, tested, taught, so how we plan it, how we do it, and then how we assess it, because we have a huge comprehensive instructional program, CIP, assessment system that
Yeah.
will roll out across the 4 core, reading, math, science, social studies next year. Not only will we have the progress information, we'll also benchmark ourselves against 51, 53, almost half the state of Virginia that are part of this consortium.
So that, yes, and part of all of this, and I agree with Ron on this, is quantifying. And being able to better manage what we're doing.
So we'll make note to kind of bring that back.
Yeah, and I apologize. I
No,
got
you're
down a
good.
rabbit hole.
Because
No,
I
we-
think it's
I'm trying to think.
It's a great topic for a
How
conversation.
can we help the teachers and keep it retained?
It's attached to something, so I actually don't think we got off track. I think that can easily be attached to retention. I think that there's a sweet spot there. I would love to share, because as I heard you, I had my teacher hat on and my assistant principal hat on, and they're very different.
Yeah.
And so I would be more than happy to talk to you about my thoughts on that. I've been in a school where I was supervising a grade level and had to check in every room that day and make sure they were all on the same page with the same PowerPoint with the same this.
Yeah, that's all.
And that makes people unhappy. On the other end, you don't wanna leave them alone. So there's a sweet spot for retention. Let's look at retention for a second.
I just got to make one comment and we can move on. SOPs are the lifeblood of any business, entity, or corporation.
Exactly.
But to expect every employer at any level, any employee at any level, every teacher at any level, to do it one way and one way only is the opposite of retention.
Correct.
You're gonna have
That's my
people
point.
that bounce, right?
That's my point.
So they have to have the framework, but be able to apply their individuality to their classrooms and to their students and to their lessons.
Exactly
Yeah.
my point.
These are by and large young people coming out of school that, what other reason do you become a teacher? Because you love it, right? And you want to love teaching and touching children. That doesn't come out right. You know what I mean? On their soul.
But at the same point, if you push too far out from the SOP, that means you're in the wrong business.
Understood.
Well, and I
Exactly
know,
right.
Mr. McGonagall,
The SOP is a framework, they have to meet the standard and hit those benchmarks.
as a parent with 3 kids, your kids have had teachers who make magic happen. Like they take whatever's on that paper and bring it to a whole nother level. We would never want to get in the way of that, but we do want to make sure that we raise the floor to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, not micromanage, but provide them with the guidelines and also the guardrails. Or you don't go past this, you stay on this track, but you give them the leverage to add in.
And the end result of all of that is, I think, what we're all saying, which is another business term, that's our KPIs, right? Our key performance indicators. What are the grades? How are they getting better?
Exactly.
Right? If that's not working, then some other shit needs to be made.
Mrs. Davis, could you move forward to, I'd like to show some retention data to them. So this is from the Virginia Department of Education. These are exit surveys. So when a teacher leaves, they do an exit survey with me, but they also do one with the Virginia Department of Education if they choose to do so. So I thought you'd be interested in this data. And so this is from last school year, and this is the reason, now, let's be clear, that's the reason people give. So Dr. Nichols and I are typically getting letters that talk about, I need to take care of a sick family member, I'm moving, those are things that people typically say. And our hope always is that it's true and we're not getting our own data. But you can see the number one reason people leave is because they are caring for others, they're having personal responsibilities. 20%, and this is relatively new, like I was speaking of earlier, they take another job in another division. So a lot of times these are could be salary hoppers.
Traders.
Now, Allison, just so I'm clear, this is not our data, this is.
No, this is the state
This
data.
is the statewide.
You have data for our,
I have, well, that's one reason I share the letters with you when they leave, that's one.
but I would be curious to get the breakdown for New Kent County, because
Well, and I think, I don't know that we have it like this, but I
I
think
do not.
going into this end of this year as we're doing this, I think it's a good way to capture it because we're doing the work anyway, so we'll just need to aggregate it as it happens.
So a lot of what the media will, go through is if you go down to the bottom, demanding workload, that's really only in the 4% kind of range.
It seems low.
that seems low. Just
What?
being a teacher and having that experience, a lot of teachers don't want to be honest about a lot of these things.
Right, that was my point.
So,
Educators are
It's
very
sold
nice
that.
people. We
yes,
are very nice and we stay nice almost no matter what, so.
yeah,
I think the bottom one is pretty low too, employment, education, field accepted position.
yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I misread that.
That's a lot of people.
Employment outside the field of education is the one I was zeroing in on. That's
Yeah.
about right.
It's called pay raise,
Yeah.
headhunt.
Mhm.
The one I've heard the most from direct communication since I started running for this position was discipline.
Mm.
Teachers are not happy because the students are very disrespectful and do not behave.
Yep.
And they're tired of it. You know. Every teacher that's talked to me has said that.
Yeah, so dissatisfaction with school or division climate.
That's why I think that's a little bit.
Now, that'd be interesting by grade level, what that is.
And that's interesting too, because again, we have to look at how we get that data.
That's
So,
right, that's why it would be better to have it
Localized.
focused on us.
oh no, but in 2 years I've been here, no teacher has written down on a paper that I'm leaving because of discipline.
And it
So
gets back
we're
to,
getting, that's his point about people being nice, we're getting different.
yeah,
And from different people.
that's why I don't know if it's worth the paper when you print it up.
Now, here's one thing that is interesting that I will start next month is, instead of doing exit surveys, HR will be doing they're called stay surveys. So we interview the top 20% of personnel and see why they stay and try to replicate that.
That's
So it's a new trend. I'll be doing it for the first time next month, so I'll let you know how it goes.
I like that that's a positive versus a negative.
Well, and it's what do that top 20% have, like the thing you met today, that makes them want to stay and how do we work?
Can we go back one slide just to
Sure.
ask a question? In terms of retention, and maybe it's a contract, the next one.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, one more. There we go. In terms of retention, is this a contract point between New Kent, William and Mary? Or could it be that if we're having a commitment with a school or we're helping them go from bachelor's to master's with an eye towards retention, then instead of 3 years, it's 4?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, is 3 just an
Absolutely.
arbitrary
But
number?
No.
with three,
Intentionality?
what we find, sorry to jump in, Nelson.
Uh-huh.
What we find is if you commit to 3, you're not going anywhere in 4.
They
You
quit
know, that's
first.
the lead time we need that you are Team New Kent through and through, and you have your relationships and you have your, so yeah, we could look at 4. 4 wouldn't be bad either.
I mean, same theory would apply, right? Same,
Same-
same, where's the 5?
Correct.
Yeah, but a lot of times,
2 is not enough.
12
Two,
years.
you divide your time and then slide and either is 1.
Our generation doesn't think that way.
I know,
They don't
I
think
know.
that far
It's-
ahead.
It's
Yeah.
toaster oven.
Yeah.
We had some conversations with folks inside and going, yeah, I think I'm gonna go do something. I'm like, wait a minute, we have an agreement. Like, you are now gonna have to pay this
They
back.
have to pay.
Oh, wait, yes.
Yes,
So the
that's
other thing we do
I like
that
that. Contract,
actually
Katie.
does equal 5 or 6 years is a lot of times in our verbiage, we'll say, once you get your full license, you will stay 3 years.
Good.
Well, it's gonna take them 3 years to get the full license, and then.
We need to put the automatic renewal in.
Yeah.
You don't give us 90 days notice, you got another 3 days.
But let me-
Except when you sign up for another year.
And we get a security deposit.
We're just starting to do the same thing with VCU, so William and Mary's there, we haven't done the VCU residency yet, but, that's something that we're starting on to. So, in closing, some things that we try to do, just, these are simple things, but I wasn't sure if you were aware of them. And so these are things we do to continue to try to retain, our awesome, and they're awesome. Our teachers are amazing. So, Haney did a beautiful job, in trying to adjust the, compensation, you know.
And I'm working on selling it.
Huh?
I'm working on
Thank
selling
you.
it.
I appreciate it. We do a lot of wellness stuff for our team, and in fact, Mrs. Waters is planning our first annual wellness fair coming up, at the beginning of next school year. But we have, you know, healthcare, we have their flu shots, we have an app for them to get free exercise. We try to do a lot of things. Something that I am proud of here is our teachers have a voice, and and I say that from being somewhere where I didn't really have one. So it's very nice to see advisory so well attained, and leadership that's in the buildings for the right reasons most every day. So those are things that we try to do to keep them and to keep them happy.
Allison, can you expand on that a little bit? When
Sure.
you say teachers have a voice, what do you mean?
So I have to speak from my own experience on this. I believe, and I'm sure some will disagree with me, but I think the majority of our teachers feel comfortable at least with one leader that they can go to and that they can speak to. There may be the isolated case, and I'm well aware that people come to you and say probably different things, but I do think a lot of that is isolated. I think the majority of people are happy and feel that they can go to one person. And I say one person because that's great. If they trust that principal, they can go to that person. If they trust Dr. Nichols, they can go to him.
And just an example from today, in a school, teacher walked up unsolicited, said, hey, saw your video, been following the budget, here are 2 things I feel really strongly about. I really think you need to do more for teachers who have been here a long time. That's our decompression. She used a different term that I would not use, teachers. And also focus on the resource side of things, you know, as by adding a 5th resource to elementary, which is one of our budget proposals, you will unlock A, B, C. We're just focused on A. I wouldn't even think about B and C related to what she was saying. And then it's not all sunshine and roses. Like I'll get stopped, and I spend a lot of time in cafeteria, one to hang out with kids, but also you see a lot of teachers. And you get into a lot of conversations about this is broken, this system for communication. It takes too long for, and I can fill in that blank with the 3 things that it takes too long for. And then it comes right back to, I had a conversation with the teacher on Friday, came back to the division table on Monday, because that's when we meet. We cannot take this long to do X. So I think that's kind of what, now is it perfect and is it blanketed? No, it's not. And does everybody feel they're able to do that? You guys are board members. When you come into school, you're still board members. I'm still a superintendent. I know where I sit in the organization, and not everybody's going to say, here's what's wrong with, you know, some will.
How do we create an environment where that's?
I think we're creating it, but I think, you know, we've talked about an additional structure from the board lens. A lot of you, as you spend time in schools, you're gonna have more people just coming up to you too. I think we push hard to have a heavy presence in schools, just for that. And our presence in schools my presence specifically, is not in an evaluative term. So I don't go in Ross's classroom and evaluate him. There are people that do that in this organization. Mine is to connect, know what's working, what's not working, and so my visits to the classroom, like, how are you doing, Mr. Miller? What do you need to be successful? So lots of those, and we make it our mission to do that quite often, starting with new teachers and then kind of working through. So I think you build it. I think it's always going to be imperfect, and we'll keep chasing it. But if there are other ideas that we can do to make it even better.
One recommendation that I have, and I brought this up early on, I think even before I think it was in conversation with you prior to the election. I would really like to see us as a board do an annual event, a teacher celebration event. At the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, wherever it seems to fit. But the board doing this as recognition for the teachers and the staff. I'm talking about a big event. I'm not talking
Kind of like
about something
a
cheesy.
block party kind of.
Kind of a, I mean.
You're talking all staff?
I'm talking about all the staff
Love
doing a huge 70 by 40 tent and getting music there and having burgers cooked and dogs and things, jump houses for the ones who have kids. Pardon?
I could say bourbon.
Well, perhaps, but they'll have to be behind the tent.
I'll bring that boat.
But I really believe if we are going to expect what we expect from them, it's only fair then to know who we are,
Relationships.
building the relationship and recognizing them. And I think it's a big part of the retention piece. When word gets out, hey, you know what, we're really appreciative. And I can't figure out any reason, I've thought it through, why we couldn't do this.
So we do a convocation to kick off the year, which we can expand to include that piece. I think it'd be great to start the year and end the year that way. And if we can find a way to do something in the middle, I think that'd be awesome too.
In the middle, it is, for example, when it's Teacher Appreciation Month, for example, the PTOs at each of the buildings has a luncheon. So for example, New Kent Middle School is gonna have a luncheon. I'm gonna make sure I told them I wanna be there that day to serve the teachers, because it gives me an opportunity to tell them, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing here. And it's an opportunity to show that. So
Absolutely.
those are the small ways, right?
Yeah.
We could go to these events and make sure that they know, hey, we really appreciate what
And
you're
we say,
doing.
yeah.
But I love the idea of the beginning of the year and end of the year.
We also did, for the first time, I'm laughing because it went horrible, we did a big homecoming celebration. So we did a parade, every school had a float in the parade, we did a tailgate, you got free admission for you and your family, and I say it went terrible because if you were at homecoming, it was an absolute monsoon. But, I mean, I think, I would love for us, for the board to come together and plan something to end this year. I think we have enough time to pull that off. So I love this, Will.
Well,
I
I think,
nominate you as the leaders of the suffrage.
yeah,
I unofficially second Ron's motion to have a party.
but I think when I said 40s, I think that's kind of what I meant, is the
It's not the first time
relationships.
this thing has got.
I like relationships.
Relationships, and it makes it important, and
No,
I do think.
I understand.
And when you have those, so people often say, like, why do you go to so many events? The conversations you have when you're celebrating athletics,
Yeah.
arts, the science fair, and that's where you build a relationship. I don't build a relationship behind that desk. Ross doesn't build it from his office. We build it in those moments. So I think creating more of those moments, Mr. Vaught, is
Will
smart.
you work with me on this? Because I've got things going on my head.
Party, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, I've already got a 40 by 70.
Can you play the drum?
I'll play the drums. Yeah, get the rest, anybody else in here
We'll get
play?
Brad and play guitar, and we'll be all right.
We can put together a whole band. I know somebody else who plays the drums.
Who?
No.
You play drums?
I play bass.
Oh, you bass, sorry.
Oh, there you go.
I play bass.
Okay, it's already together. We got it, guys.
But he is
And Ross sings.
right about the way that teachers do this. I was called El Jefe today.
What's that?
I was called El Jefe today.
Yes, yeah.
So.
Well, I will work with Ms. Anderson on this
Love
and let you guys know how we're progressing, and I'm telling you, we're gonna try to go big.
I would tell you, the sooner we can get a date, just as a starting
Yes.
point, we can push it. and
Absolutely.
lock it. So, love.
Now, how would this be different than the event that's occurring end of May?
So our Team New Kent Night is where we're celebrating specific staff, so support staff of the year, teacher of the year, retirees, and those with 25 years of service, so those are specific benchmarks.
Gotcha.
This is for,
The whole.
if I'm understanding Mr. Buck, everybody is
Everybody.
coming. So we're also
End of the year,
celebrating
let's
the bus drivers of the
celebrate,
year.
have a long
I-
year. and
Yes,
Yeah, what I wanna
kick
do
off
is
summer, like a
family,
kick-off summer event.
family, love it.
kids, family,
Keep
You
it
know.
simple.
Company couldn't do it.
SROs,
Too fancy.
come on.
Yeah.
Sounds good. We'll continue to work on other ideas for retention. I know Mr. Vaughn and I talked about daycare, childcare. So we've also talked internally about having a health clinic, so you can just go there instead of having to get an appointment, missing a half day. So I think there's some big ideas that, as a board and our team, we can work on making it world class.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your insight, and, anything further you need, just let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Ross, you ready?
Yeah.
You've been ready.
Ross stays with us.
All right, so last month, y'all had a presentation all on our CTE program. So I didn't prep a huge presentation on CTE programs, but that is what Perkins supports. So every spring, we submit a grant application to the state of how we would like to use our Perkins funds. We receive approximately this year we received $38,187.20. We anticipate that going up slightly each year, but not very much. I'll say over the last 10 years, it's gone up $6,000. So it does not go up a lot. And the purpose of the Perkins grant is really to build and strengthen your CTE program. And so we do, every 2 years, we do what's called a comprehensive local needs assessment, where the state provides us with programmatic data on sort of the makeup of our program and how we're doing against certain benchmarks they've set. And so we take a look at that and see are there any we're not meeting. And there was one that we're not meeting right now. And that is non-traditional students in specific CTE programs. So like female students in an engineering program. And so we're below the benchmark there. So they want to see, so one of the things they want to see in our grant is how are we boosting that? What are we trying to do that? And so that was one of the areas that our local needs assessment showed. Some of the other areas, we met every other benchmark. So nothing from the state said, hey, this is an area you need to focus on. Things that we identified when we looked at it, we looked at our middle school program. It's been a few years since we've put much money into our middle school CTE classes. And we just onboarded ag science last year. And so now that that's a year under its belt, we have some needs that teachers identify, hey, I need this, I need this. So we're going to use Perkins Grant to do some of that work. At the high school, we're bringing on entrepreneurship. And so that's, in the past, has been 1 unit. We're blowing that up to a full course where students are going to have to develop a business and go through that process. Well, we need to use some of these funds to put that program together. So we went and put that in there. So our biggest need is program implementation. And so that's where most of our funds are going to, is we're trying to build that program. Our teachers for tomorrow are bringing it back. We're going to need some materials, some curriculum for that, and some training for our teacher who he is a master teacher, but there's a TFT specific curriculum you follow, and so he needs to go to training for that. And so we need to pay for that out of our Perkins grant.
And then he'll go and implement that immediately after the training.
Yep.
Without autonomy.
So this summer, he'll be going to that, and then immediately starting in September or August when we return, he'll jump right into teaching that program. So,
And what grade level is this?
so that's a high school. And CTE, we can use CT Perkins funds to support CTE programs from 5th grade up to 10th grade. And so we've used it a little bit at 5th grade for some of our STEM materials, but heavily at middle school, high school, and building those programs. Some of our Perkins grant we're required to send to spend on our regional programs, so with bridging. So a certain percentage based on what percentage of your students go to bridging, and for CT classes, that a certain amount has to go to that. It's part of our tuition is what that falls into. We just use some of our Perkins grant to pay some of our tuition to that program. So, happy to answer any questions you have. This is first read tonight. I will warn you, the application is 67 pages. And
This is
so,
the grant.
yes, I'll say that probably the most interesting portions are the last 4. So if you want
I was
to really
scrolling through
go to there, and that's the budget.
63 to 67.
Go to the last 4 and you'll see the budget, and you'll start to see, okay, that we're spending money on this, this, and this, and that's what we're trying to grow.
Ross, I'm sorry to step up. Did you tell them how much the Perkins grant was?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, right at $38,000. We
Yeah.
anticipate going up a little bit, but not much. And so, but
We do a lot for that little.
I was gonna say, how much
So
do we spend to get the
we
grant?
spend a lot more on CTE
It
as an
sounds like federal
operator.
government that.
yes.
This is, helps, so.
Yeah, our process for putting this together, like I said, we have this, the needs assessment, which is one of the attachments in your document, so you can look at that and see what we found there. But we have a group of people, our advisory committee, our CT advisory committee, gives feedback, so we get some industry information. There's a ton of information in needs assessment as well as a grant on work, our local industry and what type of industries we can support in Richmond, Williamsburg, and New Kent. And so all that goes into there, we look at all that, and then our CTE department also feeds into this. So a lot of collaborative work went into development. I'll give all the credit to Peggy Spiak and Jamie Hutchison worked really heavily on getting and pulling those people together and working together together.
Excellent.
So this will come to you for a second read and hopefully approval. That gives us timeline to submit it and move it forward, so.
Okay. I'm sorry we don't have more conversation and questions for you, Mr. Moore.
Well, we'll bring it back for a curriculum work session.
Mr. Sanderson.
Yeah, load up then.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
As far as not meeting the engineering, are you gonna address that the next? Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Curious.
yeah.
Thanks, Ross.
Yes, sir. Just now, hand out here.
Okay. He took on.
So I have 4 pages, couple pages I'm gonna go through tonight, just a continued conversation on the budget and just a little bit of a narrative and talk through where we are. One of the questions, we did have a retreat, last week with the Board of Supervisors, a budget retreat. And one of the questions that we were asked was kind of for a 1-page overview of all of our changes, which this is a budget overview page, or first page. This is kind of a working document that we use just to kind of make sure that our budget is balanced and we're working through it. So I did send them the presentation that we did at our last board meeting, which when you add everything up in that presentation, it's a little bit higher than what our actual budget increase is in our general fund. So I just wanted to point out 4 line items that were not in the presentation that are more savings type of line items. One is an adjustment to school baseline. So each year, look at our schools, their enrollment and per pupil amount. That only changed by a net total of $320. So you'll note that there. And then also a little bit further down, it says increase contingency to $200,000. This is our contingency line. We've talked about that. We've looked at that being the match for our textbook fund. $200,000 is actually short of what's required for our general fund match, but we do have other expenditures and other line items that do qualify for that match, so we feel like we're covered there. So I did have to increase the contingency $3,930. A little bit further down, you'll see an adjustment for estimated attrition and staff turnover. What attrition is, for those of you that don't know,
keep in mind that Ms. Anderson hired approximately 78 people last year. So if you think about the people that left, either they resigned, retired, transitioned to other positions, the budgeted salaries that we had the year before would then be updated and changed. So typically, hopefully, if we're doing things the way we want to and we're retaining people, the folks that are leaving us are leaving at a higher salary, folks that are coming in are coming in lower. This attrition, this is when you see people that have early retirement programs and incentives, these are the dollars that people are using to fund those programs. So you'll see there that's $258,938. And then the final line is a FICA adjustment of $58,794. We could probably increase that a little bit, but what that is, I like to just put that in the budget because there are many employees who are gonna have pre-tax deductions if they elect, which isn't a saving. So when you're really budgeting a FICA amount for a salary, you're not actually paying that full FICA on that salary because they're gonna elect pre-tax deductions. So that's just a way that we look to save money. That frees up $58,000 to spend on a teacher or something else. So I just wanted to point those 4 things. This sheet is something that I will send over to the county tomorrow morning, just so that they have this as well. So I wanted you all to see that. The next page is the page that we actually took to the retreat, so it will look familiar to you. At the board retreat, actually I'm not sure if it was at the retreat, but we do know now that Mr. Hathaway is proposing a 7-cent increase on the tax rate. And with that 7 cents, there was $2 million that was recommended for the school operating budget transfer. With that being said, as you know, we've requested $3 million transfer, so we're about $1 million short in that particular request. So this is a sheet that we provided to the Board of Supervisors, not really having spoken with you all yet on what that may look like. That was just a couple of things that we thought maybe would be a good starting point for a conversation. And if you kind of look at the next page, what I did for you this evening was take all of our personnel requests and tie a price tag to it.
Yeah, so this is what is budgeted for those personnel requests. So we are to begin balancing, although I would strongly encourage us to continue advocating for what we ask for.
Yes.
There will become a time where we do have to balance. So this is where it transfers from the superintendent's recommended budget to the board's budget. We wanted to kind of engage in a conversation about potential, all potential shifts that we would make. So the next 2 sheets, so you have personal requests, and the next one is you have salary scale adjustments. The bulk of our increase in budget is salary scale adjustments, raises, and new positions. So if we're gonna have to trim a budget by any amount of money, it's gonna come from 1 or 2 places. We are a people business. You're not gonna save in the paper. And if you try to save in the paper, it's gonna jam up every copier. We know that because we tried that this year. So that's really where it's gonna kind of come from. So I think we need to begin to have those conversations and kind of prioritize.
And I think as the county is having a conversation, I will note they're having another work session tomorrow at 9 a.m. for anyone that may wish to attend that. We are going to try to attend that meeting in the morning to hopefully advocate or answer any questions that we can. But I do just want to reiterate, just like Dr. Nichols said, right now we're at $1 million. If the tax rate is not approved at 7 cents, it may be less than $2 million. That's the recommendation. So, I don't know what that number would be, but it would most likely be less.
We mentioned that we expect to receive some additional state revenue. Could be upwards of $500,000. Our goal was to put that directly into more teacher raises by getting $2 million instead of $3 million. That would not be the case. It would be to try to balance out. So we kind of starting that conversation today and continue to have that conversation. So if you have thoughts, ideas, initiatives, things you would like us to pursue. I know Mr. Reimer spent quite a bit of time with myself and Ross today, looking at a couple of these positions up close. We're happy to make that happen for folks as well.
I've also done my homework, guys. I have scheduled an appointment with Jordan and Haney this week.
Yeah.
So you guys need to get to your supervisors.
Haney and I are happy to make time. We did it pretty quickly with Mr. Reimer and Ms. Stewart. We appreciate them coming in. We'll go through and do everything we do. If we can do that with both of you, we can do that without you. However, we believe in this budget. This is the budget of the people we serve. We're trying to go after it with everything we can. So we'll educate, we'll go anywhere, anytime and do this.
Well, I'm still hopeful that Mr. Steers will be more concerned about the budget, and we'll want to get together.
So for the public, the joint meeting, sorry, we have a lot of things around our budget. We put some potential cuts. I will tell you, we don't love any of them. But at some point you have to make some decisions. So if we did all those, and I'm not fully recommending we do, that gets us about $500,000.
Can we talk a little
We
bit
can talk, yeah, this is your session, so.
about the other idea that we were talking about today, which was repurposing some of the tasks of our current APs and coming up with a new position that's lower paid, still requiring a license.
Mr. Reimer met with our high school assistant principals today, so just to fill in the backstory on that piece. And look, is there a way we can carve out a position, role specific, that would help alleviate that burden, and maybe not have it the full 12 months or the full at a different rate. I have not had a chance to come back to my team and talk with them, but I mean, those are conversations we can have about.
What burden are you talking about carving out? What's the?
So specifically, there are two things that we talked about. The state has a lot of requirements around meetings with special education. So that's a huge burden on the AP's time, and it prevents them from doing other things. The other piece of it is the testing piece. We were specifically talking about taking the testing piece as a lower salary and maybe less, not a full year position, and then having that as a separate position, and then not getting an additional AP.
Well, that's certainly a possibility. I would be more inclined to not to fund the high school assistant principal and bring back some of the resource teachers and education gifted teachers that we've got here back into the mix.
And I think under that prioritization, which I think is something we need to get to, which we can do some of that here and then some of it in between with the meetings. Your 2 elementary teachers have to have that. That's a growth classroom, class size, number of kids piece. Your math teachers, we've talked a lot of conversation about that, computer science off the ground. So, Mr. Buck, the resource teacher is pretty high on my list too.
I'm talking about over here on the scratched or potential.
Yes, sir.
That we'll have to take out. I would rather see the assistant principal position and 10616 moved over, and some of these, secondary education gifted teacher and secondary, some of these moved back into the budget rather than the assistant principal. I think that's a more crucial role in the classroom than in the administrative side of trying to, and then look at the role that we talked about, the discipline position, effectively kick that can down the road, not throwing it away.
No,
And discussing it later on.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm actually thinking that there are multiple ways in which we can carve that up. But we need to start. I think you may be right, it may not be this year.
And board members, you'll see that, the last things cut this year will probably be the first things reintroduced next year.
Yeah.
The priorities continue, so I think the Corps of Cadets was, the Navy program, I think is a great example. It didn't make 1 or 2 years in a row, for a variety of reasons. It finally became an addition on it. So if something does get cut, it doesn't mean it's not ever. It means it's not now, we have to have other priorities.
And I appreciate that, and I think two things, two major concerns. One, individually as board members, we have to, it's imperative that we spend time and do what Mr. Weimer is doing with Jordan, but getting together with our Board of Supervisors representative, we need the $3 million. We need the full amount. We need every penny of it. It's not, icing on the cake, it's the cake. And so that would be the first piece. And the second piece is, as I said, I would rather see the education, secondary education gifted teacher funded this year rather than the assistant principal. Because I still, and what you were talking about in your visit with them is completely and totally different than my thinking in terms of discipline.
Well, I haven't given up on that either. So the whole point is, I think there are ways to reassess the roles of the assistant principals so they aren't doing so many disparate tasks.
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 I got you.
Taxes.
Board members, we're also looking at, students are signing up for classes for next year, so we get an idea of demand. There's the secondary Spanish teacher position. Looks like it could not make. So that may be a nice intersection. We don't have the kids for it, so we don't necessarily, so we'll keep tracking those as well.
And I had already given some feedback to Dr. Nichols that what I want to do, and I know that I'm not bored, but having walked through Ross's, working with Ross today and looking at the instructional coaches, I think there's merit to the program, but I don't want to expand it too fast. I want to manage its growth if we grow it. Because, first of all, I saw that they can be effective, but you need the right people in place for it to be effective. That would.
The instructional coaches, do they do any work with students or just?
No, they're directly involved with students.
Okay.
Well, no,
Well, yeah, they do some
They
direct
do
work,
pull
yes.
out at all?
No, they don't do pull out. They do work with students while they're modeling with.
They're not building based. The interventionists are the ones that are doing that because they're in the building every day and know the kids in the day.
but they are working with the students so that the teachers can observe them in
Got it.
yeah.
Best practices.
Yeah.
Yes. I compare it to a practice that we used to do in the software industry called pair programming, where one guy would type in code for a while, and the other would watch, and then you'd switch.
It's great.
So based on that perspective, Mr. Reimer, we could scale back the secondary instructional coaches from 2 to 1.
Exactly.
If we needed, and that is.
It's already represented.
That's 78,000.
Yes.
If we wanted to do that piece. So I mean, there's ways we can move, but I think to Mr. Vaught's point, at the same time, keep that sense of urgency on having a budget that's funded.
Secondary would be middle school level or
So
high school or
It'll
one
be
each?
middle and high. So when we say secondary, it's 6-12.
There's a math and a reading.
We were looking at math and reading. The middle school is getting a reading specialist, part of All In
Okay.
grant funding. So that is going to be there. That's already secured through the grant. So our supervisor has an English background. So if we were to look at an instructional coach, I don't want to speak, Frank, we'd have to talk this through. We would probably look at math to be the focus.
Good.
And support because we don't have that at the secondary level 6-12.
And not only that, we're
Right.
also having gaps in math and Yeah.
And you will have some teachers, I'm quite sure, reach out to you in the coming weeks, asking for the support of that specific coaching.
The secondary education gifted teacher.
Yes, sir.
So that's not a situation that we're waiting for that to grow. That's a need that's here right now, right here. Is that correct?
I'll let Ross speak to that, because he oversees gifted.
So, right now, we have 3 gifted teachers, well, 4 teachers gifted, but 3 teachers in the gifted program.
That's it, Ross.
And so that serves all 5 schools. Right now, we're not currently doing much with the high school, but to be honest, most divisions do not do much of the gifted for high school. I mean, it's their AP, they're doing all the classes, making sure that they're taking the highest level they can. So right now, we have 2 teachers that support 3 elementary schools and 1 teacher at the middle school.
So are these pullouts?
Some pull out, some push in, and so it's a combo of both. And so this position would enable us to, they'd work with the middle school, and then they'd start working with some of the high school stuff. And so it would enable us to do more with the middle school, and then also, like I said, push into the high school stuff.
And we are looking at doing more in that direction, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
So it fits what's happening.
Yeah.
Unlike, I'm looking at the ESL is not gonna match the number apparently, and so that's not a great concern.
No, it's
Well,
ESL.
it actually,
It is.
English is second language,
Oh,
ESL.
is the one we don't need.
Well, no, I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
So that is growing, and right now we have 1 ESL teacher
1 teacher,
across 5 schools.
5 schools, 40 some students.
We have 2 students that just moved in with absolutely 0 English and very limited schooling.
Yeah.
And we still have, one's coming in high school.
For the
And-
teacher secondary Spanish that we probably won't need,
Yeah,
the ESL.
because we.
I'm sorry, yeah,
So it is a growing number. It's not nearly as many as the gifted, but the gifted has more folks there.
Yeah.
It really comes down to 5 schools and the diverse needs, or all the different needs of the kids.
let me ask a question also.
Yeah.
Just.
And this is kind of the conversation we wanted to have, so I appreciate the question.
School-based mental health grant. Now, we've got 30, we're showing 36,000.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to
That's
point
our-
that out. So this is a funding change request that we're asking that I did not have detailed out on the slide in the presentation. If you remember where I had a narrative on all of the positions.
Yep.
That's why I highlighted here that the total was correct, but I did not have that detailed out. Those are, if you remember us talking about our school-based mental health grant that runs in a calendar year, so it's a little bit strange because we just had to add a second position. Currently, we have a new hire working, which is our second FTE that's funded in that grant. I'm looking at Richard. The requirement is that we fund 25% of both of those positions. So what I did for next year, which is July to June, so it's a little bit strange, is I built 25% of two positions that we have to fund that out of the general fund.
And this is a grant through the Virginia Department of Education for 4 years. Richard can talk
Yeah.
much more extensively about it.
What is the title for those 2 employees?
Student support specialist.
Student support specialist.
And-
What is the requirement to be a student support specialist?
So they're more clinical in nature than, say, your school counselor or your school social worker. They're clinical, they have QMHP licensure and provide direct services, individual and or group to students. So, for example, we have Elk Hill that provides therapeutic day treatment to students that are Medicaid eligible. These are the same types of services provided to students within this, well, now K-12.
Can I
As a
give
new
you a
position
specific
is
student example that resonate outside of this piece and kind of talk about the services that are provided?
So those 2 provide those services for the entire school system?
Yes.
Okay, because there's some new clinical data that is just being published that, I won't bring it to the mix right now, but they're finding out things aren't as wonderful as they thought they were.
In terms of services provided?
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to get.
Yeah, services provided in that particular area.
And isn't there a growing mental health crisis taking place? So we're going to see more and more students with issues that are gonna need to be addressed.
And what we were finding is there are resources for folks who qualify for Medicaid.
Medicaid.
Yeah. But the students that need support don't necessarily qualify for Medicaid. So this allows us to provide those pieces. But yeah, we'd love to see that. And I can talk offline with you about this specific.
So one other thing we need to talk about, and that's disaster budget.
We're not having that.
We don't have disasters.
You talking contingency?
I'm talking about what happens if there's no tax raise.
What there's what?
No tax raise.
Oh, gosh. No, thank you. This concludes the work session. I want to thank everybody for.
Okay, I'm just saying, we gotta think about it.
So,
I don't know that it's gonna happen, but I also know that there are people on the Board of Supervisors who are reluctant to raise taxes.
so we can do the math on that. So we've asked for $3 million, and I don't know what we get if anything if no
If
taxes.
there's no taxes, yes.
So let's say nothing. We get no new revenue. This whole 1.8 million has to come out. So look at the devastating effects of that. Or we go to that last sheet, which is the compensation piece.
Yeah, I think we have to look at the compensation.
We don't
piece, if that-
we don't bring our paraprofessionals up to where they need to be. We don't do the driver piece.
We have to look at decompression.
We decompressing the salary scale, so we go back to a minimum of 3% raise. So all of those have some pretty dire consequences.
I understand, but we have to.
Especially when one of our neighbors and biggest competitors is going 7.3.
I totally get it,
yeah.
and I'm working on my job.
Maybe we can talk about, we were talking about other ways to incentivize and bonuses, other ways to maybe meet
So one thing to keep in mind
teacher staff.
is when the final state budget comes out, there will be, hopefully, if they include a 3% raise, there's revenue that comes with that. And
Okay,
if we're not able to provide that raise, we will not get that revenue. So
And
we're
bonuses
not
do
only
not
will we
count.
not receive county
Slow down.
funds, we also would not receive state funds.
so we have to be able to get that 3% raise.
We have to be able to provide whatever the proposal is to be able to typically to receive the state revenue that.
How much money do we need at a minimum to do that?
So right now, the recommendation in the governor's original budget, remember, was the 1% bonus. And it would be worded that you would minimally have to provide a 1% bonus to staff.
No, I want to go back to my supervisor and say, look, if you don't give us this much money, we stand to lose this much money from the state.
Okay, right now I can tell you that only for the 1% bonus.
But as soon as
Once, probably by next week, I
Well,
can give you
that- yeah.
Senate and House, and it would be a little bit, until I could really.
Okay.
cover
and
it.
possibly we can do some forecasting with you on Friday.
But that would,
Rough
that would be
guesstimation.
good, because this is one of the messages we need to give the
Right, and we
supervisors.
want to have a uniform message across the board. So we had mentioned that we would want to have some bullet points, main things we want to
And
stress.
this is definitely one of, because if we're gonna lose money, because we can't fund this 3% raise and a substantial amount of money, then we need to be able to tell them.
And I'm off the top of my head, I mean, if you look at what a 3% costs, so 944,901, and you think of that local composite index,
Yep,
you can kind of figure out what that number might look like. Might be a little bit less than that because the state typically is just funding like SOQ funded positions. But that's a very good way to do a very rough estimate of what that might look like.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, if we can get some, to Ms. Cunha's point, if there is some bullet point, or you can put something together that we can take and march and.
Kind of scenario,
well, I've already
this
had
scenario, we have this
special
one,
ed.
this is what we can do. Scenario B is if we,
Well, I think that is, and I will say, as Dr. Nichols has stated, It says cheap,
Yeah,
Yes, but
and it's
how do you,
also the cheap.
but
Well-
how do you
That's
turn it
the-
into?
I can give you, just off the top of my head, decreased opportunities for students, decreased gifted services, decreased, so we can take this position list and put it in 4 or 5 buckets.
Yeah.
Yes, priorities and then.
Increased class sizes across the board.
that's important.
So, I mean, those are realistic outcomes if we don't get some of
Things
these.
that the average person will understand as opposed to all these numbers, right? So you wanna make it user friendly.
School, if we don't get the school-based substitutes, you're gonna have more teachers not having planning time, which is gonna lead to, those type, all of these have
And,
consequences.
oh, by the way, that is still not gonna be cheaper because those contract positions are expensive.
Exactly.
Long-term, this will end up saving us money,
Right.
so,
Thank you very much.
all of these have consequences, we just have to dive in.
No, I appreciate just the conversation, so in my head, when you look at this list and it's only at 540,
Yeah,
keep in mind, like, right now, I would feel really comfortable if we kind of prioritized about $1 million worth, knowing where we are, and what potential revenue might come in from the state. And then I do think as we hear more conversation with the Board of Supervisors and where they're gonna land on a tax increase, either 7 cents or something less than or none, that's then more conversation that we need to be having about now, what does that mean for us and what are we really looking at cutting out of our budget? We are asking you to approve the budget at our April meeting. So we'll be at that meeting, we will come with those recommendations. We have to have a balanced budget when we approve it.
I get it.
So having these conversations is helpful as we're working through that information coming in over the upcoming weeks as to what this board's priorities are. You've heard our priorities, we've already prioritized a lot of this. And I think it's just something that we need to get out and educate folks on what we have in the budget and why, and hopefully gain some support.
So maybe we can, as individuals, think about what our priorities are and then as a group.
I voiced mine in terms
I
of
know you
the
have.
vice, the assistant principal,
Improving student outcomes.
being in there. I unfortunately won't be here to
And
speak to them.
I trust me, I'll represent you on that, okay?
And just so board members, we're putting this, we're putting this forward for adoption, for approval in April. It's not done until you adopt it in late May. It's just,
Right.
so
There's time.
Ms.
for
Vaughn,
us to
if
get
you
out
misrepresent
to the
you, there's still time.
community.
to
No,
return.
when, I misrepresented.
But, yes.
We have to reach out to the community now because, and that's why it would be helpful to have something that we could, user-friendly, that we could use. I would get together and maybe have like a little town hall in District 2 with Mr. Moyer.
And most importantly, talk to him about
Yes,
this.
of course.
This will move very quickly. So
I know, that's why they're
And
not
there's
that
spring
much.
break is built in there for educators.
Yeah,
So-
Later.
We somewhat shut down for a week in April.
yeah.
Do we know, is Mr. Hathaway's proposal proportionate in so much as if it's not 7 and let's just say it's 6? Doing the math, we can figure out, okay, well now we got
We sort of
1.7.
do, it's about $500,000 each one.
Well, I mean, I think your point is, will we be deducted that proportion of,
No,
if
that's
it's,
the
if
point.
it's 6, we can expect to lose this amount of funding.
Right.
It's really gonna come down to the priorities of that board and then the priorities of this board.
Now, one of the things that I do know Jordan has been good about is she's willing to push back on the recreational changes in favor of the school budget. So,
A lot of those projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no hard fast rule, but we'll play that math out and be prepared for it. We do a
Yeah.
lot of, I have never used the word disaster, but disaster scenarios, we do a lot of that working behind the scenes, so we have some recommendations for you guys.
But I just want to think about these.
Absolutely. And for us, and I can't state this enough, the sooner we get contracts out to our employees, the better we stand to be if we wait till May 28th when all this is adopted, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. So the sooner we can feel good about the compensation structure, the sooner we can issue contracts, even without an adopted budget.
Sean, you don't need any money, right? That was a joke.
So that is something,
It's on the table.
it's on the table, Mr. Reimer, actually on one of the sheets, we have broken out pre-K2 devices being a separate line.
There you go.
So we could look at, we'd like to do it all in one, but maybe we come back and we go 312 and then the next year is pre-K2. So
No, that's a good idea.
we're down that road too, that's 100,000.
Right.
We,
I
what
think
we
that
don't have to do
compensation
is issue the contracts at a lower salary rate and then either have to go back, reissue, they're looking at that. So if we're able to, try to stay committed to the decompression of the teacher scale, it's very helpful in getting those contracts out. That's what they're looking for.
Once-
They wanna know what's my salary gonna be next year.
Once we feel like we can do this under any scenario, we'd like to move forward with contracts,
Absolutely.
and then figure out the rest.
I think that's a priority, quite frankly, because that's gonna make them happier, that's gonna attract more people, and buildings don't teach children, teachers do, the staff, that's priority.
I would agree, before we went into the personnel piece, that I would like to see us do, because these paraprofessional recommendations came from every single school. The decompression piece, like I told you, I stopped in the hallway about it today, is coming from our folks, before we add to make sure we take care of.
So this piece right here is critical when we get together with the supervisors. Because decompression it has to be done.
It has to be done.
We have to get that taken care of.
Well, then, once we do that, we never have to talk about it again, unless we start compressing it again, which I don't think we want to do.
Well, the areas where we're getting teachers from are in those areas, or in that step 15, and step 16.
That's right, and that makes us, that allows us to steal teachers.
Right, I did that as good for Lynchburg.
One thing
Let's
we.
rename it, final decompression,
Yeah.
I don't think, that's
Yep.
right, decompression.
rename it.
Fun.
I would like that.
One thing we did,
That's usually
fail to
disastrous.
mention at the retreat that we wanted to, was we did notice that there was another, SRO position added in the county's budget.
And we love our SROs.
We do absolutely love them, and, we were just looking at the price tag of having a sixth one. And that may be something that you could advocate towards the county of shifting that funding,
To them,
back over into,
their budget.
something else that could be used, whether these
Or divide
schools-
that money between the SROs that are already there.
Sure, that was just something that we noticed that we weren't really, we weren't a part of
Yeah,
that.
that was one that did not come from us, although it impacts us. So we mentioned that to Mr. Hathaway, and wanted to make sure we mentioned that.
You know what their thought process was behind adding an extra one? That one that would just like go to all the schools to help out with the SRO?
I think it was to provide additional coverage for floating and those type of pieces, and I
But the
think it's.
SRO's been asking for additional support.
So everybody head to her. I see a lot of tired faces.
So if you individually wanna send priorities, or if you just wanna have conversations, or, we'll have our, group meetings, and anyone else that wants to come through.
So what I suggest that we do is we have a specific, we have a specific, when do we have to have this by?
We'll get you talking points in categories. It might just be a chunk list of, here are the priorities, here's what happens.
What I think I'm gonna do is ask you to each send me your priorities
3 million.
in an email.
I like your priority.
Yeah.
Without copying it.
3 million.
That would be the priority, but we also have to
Well,
have the arguments for pushing that.
And board members, Haney and I are available anytime you need us to talk through, work through
Yeah.
brainstorm, all of that in between. So, I mean, that's what we do. She is incredibly gifted at doing it, and we can make.
Is there any way that we can begin this conversation earlier next year with the supervisors?
We
Yeah.
don't, in the past, we are happy to start the conversation as early as we can, but we really can't start having this conversation until we really knew what's being recommended for funding from the board of supervisors.
Got it.
So we're really kind of tied to that
Their
waiting for that
calendar,
presentation.
Correct.
But I mean, we can start, we know our priorities, and we're happy to.
So next year, I would really like to get ahead of this.
Well, and that's, everyone would.
We also
Because
had
we
the
came in on the
elections,
backside
and
of
it was changing, the board was changing, the
Right,
school board was
right.
changing.
Yeah.
So we
I
don't
mean,
have to
we've
worry
had,
about that.
to be fair, we've had these priorities for months. you
I
know,
understand, but I haven't been able to work on it.
Correct, and you will be a part of that process, so we'll be ready.
Yep.
And if it doesn't get approved this year, we'll have a jump start on next year, because we're gonna need the same thing.
Do we have a feel for just the general sentiment of the individual BOP members? Like, you know, we know Ron Steers is a no guy, right? We know Thomas Evelyn is a,
He's not necessarily a no guy. It depends on if he's gonna run or not.
right?
With him, just trying to get in touch with him.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I know about Georgia. And I get it. Our district,
Just, so we're still on the work
I
session
know, I was gonna say,
with,
You're right.
Al is watching.
so,
Al.
yeah, we're still working through the work session piece of the agenda, so just, but yeah,
she's concerned about taxes.
so I think that's something we'll have to balance in this piece.
And Ron wants to make sure all the kids are fed
Absolutely,
You
I
know,
100%.
he's our
agree with
partner.
that.
every year.
Yes, he's our partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going, huh?
Well, I mean, I just wanted you to have those 4 pages. I wanted you to know that I will be sharing, the top document with, the county staff tomorrow for them to share with the board of supervisors. It's really, I just kind of wanted to point out, it's everything that was in that presentation that we gave you in March, minus those 4 kind of saving line items that I reviewed.
So, anything you think we can do, any partnership you need, any support you need, we've got you every step of the way. We believe in this budget, we think it'll make us better, we think it'll help us keep the great folks we have, so, you just let us know, but we have some homework and we'll get working on it. So, Monday, April 15th is the, next board meeting, that's also where we look to adopt, so.
Okay, just a second. Rod, did you want to say something?
Just an informational piece.
Yes, sir.
I have a friend who is kind of up there at NASA, and she is offering to New Kent County school system. I guess April 8th, there is a partial eclipse, starts at 2,
Oh, yeah.
will be the darkest at 3:19, and NASA will give the school system eclipse glasses that they can actually, their science classes can
We'll take
actually go out.
We'll take as many as they'll give, there's currently a shortage.
Okay, so I'll let her know. If you'll give me a number, she'll make it happen. Because they're, I mean,
prioritize.
just, you don't have to, I mean, we can talk afterward. I
I should
just,
say 4,000.
3,600 for kids, 400 for staff, 4,000.
okay,
That would be everybody, anything under that,
Okay.
we'll make happen and prioritize.
I'll send it.
And if you go to Texas,
And she wants to teach.
near El Paso,
There are days she does, I'm sure. But most of the time, only when she has to go to DC.
Any additional, budget-related pieces? Otherwise, we'll turn it back over to the chair for dismissal.
okay, I guess we're done here. We're adjourned. And I'm officially tired.
Now,